Good day, everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Market Views with Rufaro as usual. Today we have Zico as our guest. Zico, welcome to Market Views. And me, Uton, as usual. So moving on, in the past week, the biggest bank in Zimbabwe in terms of balance sheet, CBZ, gave us a full year financial statement. And it's something that we've all been waiting for since maybe, I'd say, end of March. That's where we started our waiting period. So considering with these results, Rufaro, basing with traditional banking structure or banking model, how do you fare with the CBZ results?
Thank you, Uton. So you remember when lending was suspended,
Yes.
the biggest question was, how are banks going to survive in an environment like that? And it's very important for us to try and analyze to see where is a bank like CBZ getting most of its money from. So it's quite interesting. You find out that 55% of CBZ's revenue is coming from what they call non-funded revenues. This has nothing absolutely to do with lending,
Yes.
and only 45% is coming from lending. So it's an interesting thing to watch. If you compare it, you can actually see that banks are sort of like tilting from the traditional model of relying on lending and getting other things that give them money, for example, creating products in the money market, something like that. I think Getbacks is the only bank that is still heavily relying on lending. I think they have about 95% of their revenue coming from lending.
Yes, I think you gave us a quite interesting point. Looking at CBZ, about 13 operations, they have quite different ways of making money. So coming from a banking background, I think Rufaro gave a hint on how banks usually get their money and how they might try. So what do you think of the industry at large, and maybe zeroing down to CBZ on how they get money, how now are they shifting from our traditional get money from your depositors, lend it out at a higher rate, and enjoy the difference?
Okay, thank you, Yuton, for having me on this show.
Yes.
So what we would need for us to get the brief understanding is, firstly, is the on-balance sheet funds that the bank uses to lend to other people so that they can get a profit. So that used to be the traditional way of banking, right? Now they have other activities which involve using off-balance sheet funds.
Yes.
So basically, it's taking funds from other companies and using them to invest in other companies. So if a company B wants wants a loan, then they go to company A to seek for that kind of funding. So it takes a workforce that is capacitated in a way to engineer those kind of financial products that can be able to facilitate those kind of transactions. So that has been the major focus for banks as we move into this into these times. So you will see that every other bank is also following suit, which is kind of like the future.
All right. Looking at what you said, and I also said earlier, I think this all comes down to loans. I think, where are these banks getting money? We saw the European Investment Bank chipping in Zimbabwe, lending out to about 3 banks right now. So, and I think, Rufaro, you can just give us a view of how does CBZ operate and still maintain such a high position in terms of their balance sheet, and maybe just a breakdown of their loan book.
Okay, so like you rightfully articulated, CBZ is the biggest bank in the country, looking at its balance sheet. But their model is they don't get wholesale money, they don't get retail money. They get wholesale money from corporates around the world. So if you check in their financials, they clearly highlighted that they get money from other investment banks on a tenure of average 3 years. around 9%. So already CBZ is getting lines of credit like the ones that the three banks you mentioned, which got money from the European Investment Bank got. So already is the model that they pursue.
Yes.
So they could be getting something from the competitors already. So it's quite important for us to understand the structure. I'm not saying they won't get it. Probably they will in the future benefit from such lines of credit, but CBZ already pursues getting deposits from lines of credit and creating financial assets from that.
All right. Thank you for that. I think I'm going to move on to another company, Tanganda. This is the first time since it being coming out from Miko's, and from the financials they gave us. I'd say looking at them at its face value, they have low revenues. They have about low volumes. Export revenues also were down considering to the last period, and they gave us a disclaimer. I think you can get more into that. And just what is your take of Tanganda's position now as an individual company or as a separate company coming out from Miko's after about a decade or so trading under a group?
Okay, thank you. So yes, this is the first time we are actually getting audited financial statements from Tanganda. You know, yeah, it was under the merger. So everything was consolidated into the financials of the bigger company, and we are actually seeing the results for the first time. I think that's not really what the market expected.
Yes.
In inflation-adjusted terms, the revenues were down, operating profit was down, even the export sales were down. Only the local sales were a bit up. Just looking at the numbers. But they did explain that macadamia and avocados, which constitute a significant portion of their revenue, were not yet harvested and exported by half-year results, and they hope that come full-year results, it will have been filtered into the full financials. But I somewhat think the numbers that Tanganda is giving us and the market expectation, although factoring that
Yes.
the contribution from macadamia and avocados wasn't there, I just feel like there's a really big disparity.
All right. I think as Zico, I'll come to you with the same issue in Tanganda, but maybe you can come in from an investor point of view. Tanganda is quite of right now it's in the top 5 performance year to date on this Mweso exchange. It being there and giving us negative results, I think we have about 3 or 4 other counters which gave us a decrease in inflation-adjusted figures. What is your take on it now as an investment, Tanganda? Or maybe how do you see Tanganda from now in Tanganda you saw on the initial listing when it came on the exchange?
Okay, so in my own opinion, I feel like Tanganda is still a good investment because we also need to consider what they said in their explanation, right? So it means effectively when the sales for macadamia and avocados happen, that's when you only realize the profit, right? And since its year end is March next year, then we'll really see the perspective of their performance after coming out of Miko's. And also it has about over 260% increase year on year since it got listed. And also its market cap is around 64 billion. So it is a good counter, and those sales will start reflecting as also the COVID restrictions kind of like ease down and transactions with the international market expand.
I think that is, before we leave at Tanganda, Rufaro, what is your take on Tanganda now in terms of investment? I think he gave his point. Do you think it's an account to buy? Are you buying it for growth? Are you buying it to hedge your investment, or are you even buying it at all?
No, I'm not buying Tanganda. But he highlights something very interesting. Tanganda's market cap. So Tanganda is trading at around 64 billion market cap. And usually when you talk of Tanganda, immediately you start to think about Ariston.
Yes.
So Ariston is actually trading at 6 billion. So Tanganda is trading at 10 times Ariston. But traditionally, if you look at this company, Tanganda is about 3 times the size of Ariston.
Yes.
So you see what I'm saying, the numbers and the reality. I think there's a bit of a divergence there. Even if you look at the dividend, they did announce dividend, Tanganda, which was 50 cents a share. How much is a Tanganda share? Around $250. So if you want to buy one Tanganda share, it's costing you $250. You're getting a dividend of what? Of 50 cents.
Yeah.
Well, what's your dividend yield there? 0.2%. You see,
Yes.
and what's the average dividend yield in the market? About 1%. Okay. So you see the difference. So I really think investors need to think twice about their assumptions on Tanganda. I know it exports about 45% of their revenue comes from exports, and it could be a good thing, but I just think the expectation is a bit high for Tanganda.
I think you mentioned an issue of dividend. CBZ paid out about $1 billion in dividend. As you go, what do you think? I think I'm just extending the same question I gave to Rufaro for Tanganda from a CBZ point of view.
Well, CBZ, as it stands, it's sort of like for people that have not yet been in the market already, it's too late. Yeah. You know, so you need to be in the market where you can really see a growth, right? CBZ has been struggling to surpass the $200 mark. Yeah. So you see, with their market cap being 60 billion, you know, if it's struggling to break the $200 barrier, then it's always a problem, right? Yes. But then you would also need to see that we are in highly inflationary times. So the question is really on, if you are going to buy it, if is the increase going to be above the inflation? Yes. And with CBZ, my answer is going to be no. You know, so if it's going to be an investment, I wouldn't really want to do that. But then as a counter, I'm sure it's going to increase. Not really sure if it's going to surpass.
I think you actually gave an interesting point of CBZ. I think 2020, it was one of our top performers.
Best
performer in 2020. Last year, it was the only counter in the negative year to date. So it's something you have to watch out for. Maybe, I think you mentioned the issue, the 200 price. It's maybe like, everyone knows the price of CBZ around that. I think.
But also you have to think in futuristic terms. Yes. CBZ is going to acquire FML.
Yes.
They're going to, if it happens, merge with ZB. It's going to be a big financial conglomerate. So it's probably something that could entice you
as an investment.
As a potential investor.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion we can spend more time on some other time.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe. Till we meet again next week. Have a good day.
Cheers.
What do you think?
I think I got it best. No, it's